Welcome to the Osmium Update, your weekly data and infrastructure update from the Osmium Data Group. Brought to you by Max Mortillaro and Arjan Timmerman.
Hello, Max. Welcome to another episode of the Osmium Update. Let's keep it easy this time. You've had the opportunity to be virtually a guest of Tech Field Day at the AI Infrastructure Field Day number 2. So tell us what was going on there. What was your insights, and what was something that the viewers of us really need to dive into?
Yeah, thank you, Arjan. As you said, I was virtually joining AI Infrastructure Field Day 2. I think it was last week or the week before you visited me in Prague. It was a great and very rich event. It was a 4-day event in the end, so I was attending virtually, so I had only the opportunity to attend 2 days of presentations. There is more to catch up with. I believe that there was a full day at Google and a full day at one of the storage vendors. So I need to catch up on those, definitely, especially a session with our friends from Solidigm, which were recorded. I forgot at which vendor, but that's not important for now. Nevertheless, we had several sessions, somewhere around networking in AI, which is, I will tell you, a very obscure topic for me. I don't know for you, but definitely it is for me. And the vendors I want to talk today about were Phison, which is a company creating SSDs. We had interesting presentations as well with Nutanix. And if I'm not mistaken, there was also some more stuff there, but I will keep it here for now because those are the most relevant to the areas we discuss about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We both know Nutanix, of course, so it's one of the vendors that we've been talking to for a very long time already. I think the first time I've heard from them or was in contact with them was during Storage Field Day 3 back in the day, maybe 2. I don't know anymore, but it's a long time ago. So what were they telling at the event? What was their insights into what they're doing with AI and how they leverage that for its customers?
So Nutanix was presenting its Nutanix AI solution. As you said, we are both very familiar with Nutanix. I've been even deploying Nutanix in production for the past 10 plus years. You've been there at the very beginning. We remember Nutanix as an HCI vendor back in the day, which was trying to disrupt VMware. The company has evolved a lot. And I think that reflects into what they've been doing here and presenting at AI Infrastructure Field Day. Basically, so what they want to do is to allow you to deploy AI infrastructure regardless of what platform you're running below, right? So that was one of my first asks, which was, do you need to run a Nutanix cluster to run that? Not necessarily. It is really agnostic. You could run that in the cloud, on-prem, wherever you need to. What is interesting there is that you can run CNCF certified, deployments, distribution. It's based, I believe, on Kubernetes. And from there, it allows you to manage different models. The difference between that and you doing that on your own is that they are taking the most popular models, they are validating the design, making sure that they're running on supported releases and so on. So you're running something which has some kind of assurance that it has been validated, etc., etc. Also, when you select a specific language model, so a specific LLM, it will deploy the infrastructure in the backend, so how many containers you need with the right CPU configuration and so on. And also, obviously, because this is AI, you cannot run AI these days more or less without any GPUs, so it's also going to provide you GPU recommendations. If you're going to run that on-prem, it's going to be based on what you have on your machine. But if you're running that in the cloud, it is going to recommend proper, let's say, instances with GPUs, whether you're doing that from Azure or from AWS. So that's it in a nutshell somehow, Arjan, what they're presenting.
Very interesting. I would have had dozens of questions. Based on what you're telling me right now, probably there's much more information when we look at the YouTube or Hexstrong, is it now, right? Yeah, one of the questions would be, so is it really focused on AWS and Azure at the moment, and will other cloud environments be integrated as well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or and from a on-premises perspective, how does that work out? Because do they calculate things based on what you have, but do they also give you advice on what you should buy? What's going on with that? It's really interesting, but I think there's still a lot of questions that are needed to be filled in.
So I'm going to give you a half-baked answer, and I'm sorry for that. But looking at how much time we have to record our update, I have to keep it short. Their platform, so it runs on Nutanix Kubernetes platform. So you can run it based on AKS or on EKS from Amazon. So on Azure, on Amazon. I'm really bad at the A and the E's. My English is really horrible, so sorry for that. It runs on the Google Cloud Platform and also on SUSE Rancher. And you could also, you can run it also on kind of certified hardware platforms. We want to write an article about that on our Osmium Media page. So stay tuned for that, because we want to do some coverage of the event with a bit more, deeper insights. What you do there is you have your own models, which are either you get them from Hugging Face or from NVIDIA, NIM and Nemo, so you can grab that, and it's what I said, it's validated and pre-configured. And you can also create your own models, which are going to use the APIs, which are exposed by Hugging Face, by NVIDIA and so on. And then, of course, you can test your models and so on. You can implement some kind of role-based access into it. It's a really interesting solution, so I really recommend viewers to have a look at that. And with that, I'm going to move to the next one, which is Phison.
Yep.
So any questions on that? I think, have you ever heard about Phison, by the way?
I heard about them, but it's just too little to give any insights into it. So I'll leave it over to you. Tell us about Phison.
Yeah, so Phison, and we'll put the name here somewhere in the under the comments, so you can see how that is written properly. So Phison is a company which has more than 20 years in leadership in NAND controller design, right? So they started, in 2000 with world's first system on a chip USB flash controller. They've been doing a lot of stuff with SDs and MMCs and so on. So pretty much everything which is an SSD or has some kind of NAND memory is probably tied to Phison in a way or another, because they're working a lot on controllers. But what they did recently is that they started maybe 3-4 years ago, they've started getting into the design of SSDs and working on their own, let's say, technology there. Really interesting company. They're based, I believe, in South Korea, if I'm not mistaken. And what they were presenting basically at AI Infrastructure Field Day is more or less stuff that they do with acceleration for GPUs and AI, but also they wanted to present their SSD validation and their SSDs, which were presented there. So running through that very fast in the interest of time once again, one of the first things which they presented was, I believe, called ActiveX or something like that. I'm just thinking AI-Adaptive, sorry for that. So AI-Adaptive is kind of a solution which provides kind of a cache for your AI workload. Obviously, some of the delegates pointed out that if you're deploying a solution, you would like to integrate that caching ahead of the process. But the reality is that many organizations, especially mid-size or even smaller ones, are getting into that with already available hardware, and maybe they may not have thought about this process. How to optimize the environment so that you have better throughput, so that you do not run out of memory and so on. The idea really is to use SSDs to extend kind of the memory which is on the GPUs. So it acts kind of like a cache. That was the first thing they presented. The second thing they presented was Pascari, and Pascari is a kind of an SSD which has been designed specifically to meet the needs of large data. So it has very, very robust, they have two models. I think one is really write intensive, the other is for read heavy workloads for inferencing and so on. And we're going to talk about that in probably a dedicated blog post on Osmium Media. So we will find out more about that. Obviously, it was a first for them, so it was sometimes a bit tricky to find the information that we're looking for, but it was really exciting. So with that, Arjan, any question for you about Phison?
What I'm getting from you is that they kind of moved from the NAND controller to providing NAND storage to its customers, still leveraging the NAND controller. It's interesting to see what Solidigm told and leverage what the two are doing for AI, especially for customers that, like you already mentioned, maybe have an infrastructure, want to leverage what they already have before they are going to buy into maybe a bigger on-premises environment. So it's really interesting to see what's going on that side of the pond, because we always see a lot of these things happening, and everybody's saying you need to do it in the cloud, or you don't want to buy your own hardware, but still there's a lot of companies, I'm guessing, that want to at least leverage some of the infrastructure that they already have and helping them do that in a more granular and easier way. That's probably what a lot of customers are looking for. So it's very interesting to see. That's it for me. Probably we need to close it with that. Any last comments from you for AI Field Day?
Absolutely, and sorry for making it longer than it should be, but a few more comments. What was interesting is really so a few things. Talking about Phison, we learned at the event that Vidura, which we wrote an article about, the company making which launched recently an all-flash storage system a year ahead of their plans, because obviously the market is there and the urgency is there. They are based on Phison SSDs, so that's something that we will have to explore maybe later on. The other thing which was interesting with Phison is they have a very, very thorough process for SSD design validation, because they've been doing this kind of validation over the years for all sorts of vendors which needed to integrate their controllers with what they do. And what you said really was interesting, is to see, what is the strategy of Solidigm, versus Phison and so on. So as we get to explore and write about what each vendor does, obviously our readers will have the opportunity to see what is going to be there. And why not? It might be also the opportunity for us to write a paper on that. Closing comments, AI infrastructure is a really, really interesting space. Perhaps for me, the connection of all the things, around all of the networking stuff was a bit kind of obscure for me for obvious reasons. But it was a very rich and very packed event, and lots of insights also about how things are done in AI, etc. So really good and good, let's say, learning opportunity for us delegates. So with that, Arjan, I'm done for today's Osmium update. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Please feel free to follow us for more insights. You can find us on Blue Sky at Osmium Data Group, and on LinkedIn also via Osmium Data Group. Thank you, and see you next week for another Osmium update.